Fast forward to 89. I'm Larry. Welcome back. And in this video, we're going to be working on this EGR valve plate that I've got. So this is for my 351 Cleveland that I'm building for my 76 Ford truck. I decided to go a different route with the intake, which I will discuss more and go in more detail about in another video. But in this video, I want to make a plate to cover this off to block the EGR valve off. Now I will keep the EGR valve on here just for stock appearances because I want the motor to appear completely stock. And then because I'm gonna keep a 2-barrel carburetor, but I want to be able to plate to block this off so then we do not have this open port. This open port to the left here comes up and is fed through these ports here into the plate. This one on the right is not important because it comes through this port here, which will not be used anymore because there will be no more crossover, exhaust crossover in the intake anymore. So I'm gonna take a piece of this sheet steel that I got here and I'm gonna cut me out a template to go on here and make my own gasket to cap this off. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a piece of cardboard here, and this will be a good template to trace our shape out on, and then we can cut it out of the cardboard, and then take the cardboard and transfer it to the metal, and then cut it out of the metal. And for something like this, I usually use a Sharpie, but for something like this, I want a real fine line because I want it real close to the edge here of my plate. That way it's not sticking out past this. So I'm gonna use just a regular ink pen for this. And while we're here, we can't forget to trace out our lines. Now this will be a little bit more difficult because I can't get straight onto it, obviously. Now, since I couldn't get the full hole here, I'm gonna have to complete that hole, but at least I got the top line as a guide to start with. Essentially what I can do is flip this around. For some reason, I just noticed they made this hole bigger than this hole. I don't know why. So that is something I'm gonna have to deal with. So I can't get a true size yet, so I have to wait till I cut this template out and then do something about it. Now we're gonna take the razor blade and just trace our template out. You could also use scissors, but I like this because it gives me a real sharp, precise edge. All right, now since this is a template, I'm not worried about copying these center holes, obviously, because these are going to be plugged off anyway. So all I need is the plate and the bolt holes. And you can see that fits perfectly. We'll trace that out on a piece of steel and we'll be good to go. Okay, so I'm going to show you a little trick to get those holes. I can't get anything that's small enough to get them. So once we make sure our gasket is lined up properly, you want to make sure you hold it there good. Make sure you get it lined up around the edges properly. And once you feel like you got it pretty center, we're gonna take our ball peen hammer and take the ball end, and where the bolt holes are, we're gonna just lightly tap it. Do the same thing to the other side. Make sure our gasket didn't move. And you can already kind of see an outline of the bolt hole. And then when you remove it, if you look, you can see the outline of where that bolt hole is. So that's exactly where we got to cut it. Now you can do this with the perimeter as well if you wanted to. You can just take you a piece of cardboard, you know. I take just a blank piece of cardboard set up here, and you could go around and tap it the same way. And for that, I'd use the flat end of it and just lightly tap all the way around it. And you can see you're already starting to get the shape of it. And that's one way to do it. You can do that, but I just like to draw mine out whenever I can. Okay, so I already cut this one out, and I'm gonna cut this one out. And what you can do is, if you have a good sharp razor blade, what I like to do is just take my razor blade and I'll get it started cutting the line out. But then when you want to get to your like edges, you can actually let the razor blade do the work and just move the piece that you're cutting. Just like so. And it ain't got to be absolutely 100% perfect. You can see I actually did a little bit better on this side than this side, but as long as you get the basic shape, it's just for a bolt hole, so it's not that big of a deal. And you could even center your EGR valve and just drill one hole if you wanted to, but it's up to you. All right, so when it comes to actually drawing on a piece of metal, I will use a Sharpie to give me nice lines. I try to always use a factory edge of a piece of metal if I can, because that's one less edge I have to cut out. So okay, so we got the plate made. Now these holes are not absolutely perfect, but it doesn't matter because you're not going to see it anyway. The main thing is you want it flat and smooth, in which case it is. So now this should fit just like that. And now when we put our gasket up there, put our EGR valve up here and tighten it down, we have our bolts that will go through here and tighten down like they're supposed to. Okay, so this is the finished product of the template that I cut out and painted. I just painted it to help keep it from rusting. It's not absolutely necessary to paint it, but I just wanted to so then it doesn't rust. So this will go on here, just like so. It actually goes this way. See, it lines it perfectly. Now, I hear you asking, what are you going to do about a gasket? Well, you could use a normal EGR valve gasket. In my case, I'm going to make my own gasket, and that's what this here is. This is a hole punch kit, and it's made to make gaskets. So I got me some paper gasket material here that I picked up from my local O'Reilly's. You don't want to use cork gasket for this because essentially what we're going to do is, this is going to be for a vacuum port. Now, most EGR valve gaskets are kind of like a metal, almost like exhaust gasket. And that's because usually you have this exhaust port, comes from the intake and comes through this hole here, so you need to seal. Well, since I don't have an exhaust port on my aluminum aftermarket intake, I don't have to worry about that. All I got to worry about is sealing off this port for the vacuum that comes through here. So for that, a paper gasket will be good enough. If you want to, you can use a regular EGR valve gasket, but instead of buying one, I'm just gonna make my own. So I'm gonna use this for my template to draw out on for my gasket. Just need something flat, so I'm gonna use the bottom of my spacer here. Okay, so now the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna punch these holes out while I have a big surface to hold the gasket in place, and then we will cut the big perimeter out. So if you've never used one of these before, it's very simple. I got this one from Harbor Freight, and you simply just slide your gasket material between the two blocks, and then for whatever size hole that you want, you just take your piece and you set it in here, put it up here, you smack it with a hammer on top, and it will punch out the gasket piece that you need. Like so. And of course, you could just cut this out if you wanted to, but I have the resources to do it this way, so I figure why not do it this way. And then we have one hole there. And you can take a razor blade and trim that little bit of corner there out, but that's no big deal. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so for this part, I'll just use a pair of scissors to cut this out with. And also, don't do what I did. I just thought about it right before I cut this. I should have put this off more to one side or long ways this way. That way I don't use up more gasket material. I mean, it's fine. I can still get a gasket out of this section. I have this section here. But you always want to kind of put your piece as close to the edge as you can to save more room so you get more use out of your paper. But that's fine. I just didn't think about it when I did this one, but keep that in mind. So now this piece is done, and this should line up perfectly with the gasket, with the template, and it's actually meant to go the other way. There we go. And that's perfect. Couldn't ask for no better, and that'll be good for sealing off vacuum. So we'll put our gasket up here, like so. Then our template, and then ordinarily we would go ahead and put the EGR valve up here and then bolt it down, but since I don't have an EGR valve right now, because I'm gonna use my original EGR valve that's still on the engine, I don't have it accessible right now. So instead I'm just gonna bolt this in here for now to hold on to it, and that way I'll know where it's at when I get ready for it. But that'll be it. Put the EGR valve on here, and then it's all blocked off and no longer hooked up. It will not leak vacuum, and since this port is not used on the intake, that won't leak, so that'll be good to go. That's a done deal. Okay, so here's a little sneak peek at the intake I ordered, and you can see here what I'm talking about. You see how it's supposed to have a port there ordinarily, but there is no port in this intake, which is exactly what I wanted. I don't want any exhaust port, so that will completely block off that port. I ain't gonna worry about that. And then now that we have this, that will not leak vacuum. So it'll simply just go on here like this. Like so. And I'll probably end up getting bolts to go back here instead of using these studs, because I don't really like these studs. I think I'll just get bolts to bolt it down, but for now, this is how it is. I'll keep the studs on here for the carburetor, but I'll probably bolt that down, but that's how that will go. It goes on the intake just like this, and then your EGR valve's back here, and it'll look factory. So once this intake's painted blue with the rest of the engine, you'll never even be able to tell. Alrighty guys, well that's it. A little different scenery for the end of the video, but I keep the intake in the house just cause until I get ready to use it, I'll just keep it in here for now. But anyway, that's all there is for this video. So if you like the video, give me a thumbs up. I'd appreciate it. If you're not subscribed, consider subscribing. I'd appreciate that. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave them in the drop box down below and I'll get back to you. And that's all there is for this one. So until next time, I'll see you on the next one. Take care.